Sadly, no, this title and thumbnail are not clickbait. In fact, the V8 LandCruiser 70 series is going to die. A very reputable source, cars.co.za, which is a South African automotive outlet, well, they claim that they have inside sources which say that this, at least what's under here, the 4.5 litre V8 turbo diesel, well, that is starting to be phased out as of August 2024 with a full death by August 2025. In fact, this 76 series here, which refers to the fact that this is the Wagon, well, that will be first to lose the V8, which is really sad news. With the 2024 major facelift that this thing has just received, well, they've introduced the new 2.8 litre turbo diesel, at least new to the LandCruiser 70 series. It's straight from a Hilux. Not only that, if you want the V8 here, prices have gone up by $10,000, which makes really 0 sense. They haven't changed $10,000 worth of things on this car, but the reality is they're in short supply and high demand, so they can charge whatever they want. But I also bet my bottom dollar that Toyota know that this is the last V8, and therefore, well, they're charging it at a higher price. I mean, think about it, this thing, since this V8 was introduced in 2007, has hardly changed. They've only really changed the bonnet panel and some of the bumpers, things like that, so it's actually not that expensive to produce. And really, over time, it should get cheaper thanks to amortization versus, you know, more expensive. But also at the local media launch for the facelifted 70 series, Toyota, well, they didn't outright say that this would go, but they did say that it was getting really hard to sell the V8. And as soon as the Australian fuel emission standards come in, which we don't know when, but we think it's soon, well, this V8 probably can't be sold anymore. Don't get me wrong, I'm willing to eat my words if this thing hangs around for another few years. But personally, I'm gonna speculate here, I really don't think it will. So today we're going to take you for an exterior tour of the facelifted 76 series, which is the Wagon variant. We have looked at the 79 series, which was the single cab. You could also get that as a dual cab, and that was the 4-cylinder. So I'll link that video down below if you want to watch that. And by the way, if you want a comparison between this and the 4-cylinder, don't worry, that is coming to the channel really soon. So make sure you subscribe now. We're also going to check out its practicality. We're going to check out its interior and what has changed for the facelift. We're going to performance test this thing. See, well, how much worse is it than the 4-cylinder? And then I'm going to drive this thing and tell you why this is so terrible to drive, but why you still want one. And even though the order books are closed at the moment for the V8, they probably will be opening up quite soon. So I'm going to let you know if you should be waiting up in that very long line. All right, let's get into it. Let's quickly talk about pricing for the new LandCruiser 70 series, because honestly, it went up an absurd amount. So it starts with the Workmate, which is the base model, which really, you don't get like any amenities. That will set you back 75,600 Australian dollars before on-road costs. And it only comes with the 4-cylinder for $6,000 more than before. If you want the GXL, which you definitely want, it's top of the range, but it comes with just so many basic necessities. For example, central locking, power windows, a front locking differential. All of those things really make that so worth it. And for the 4-cylinder in the GXL, that'll cost you $79,800. But again, well worth it over the base Workmate. And if you want this, the V8, well, hold your horses, friends, because that will cost you $83,900, which is about $10,800 more than before with the V8. Huge increase. And as I said, with cost amortization, you know, the long-term use of this, which has been around since bloody the 80s, I struggle with that one. Anyway, what do you get new with the facelift? Well, honestly, I really like it. I love these new lights here. They're finally LEDs with a cool daytime running light. You still got your halogen turn signals there. You've also got LED fog lights, which is nice. The whole front bumper has been revised, and if you go for the GXL, you get chrome bits. You can also step on that if that's of interest. So you need to work on tinky your car, well, you can. You'll also notice that this panel up here has been, well, completely revised. There's no hood scoop anymore. Of course, this does still have a top-mounted intercooler. So how does that air go in for the turbo? Well, it goes in this letterbox style opening there. I can imagine that that's significantly less airflow, but I suppose maybe it didn't need it. I wonder if that will affect tuning though. I also kind of miss it because I actually really liked it, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. New as well is this Toyota Heritage Grille. I really like how Toyota is spelt out there. You've also got a radar here. That's because as part of this facelift, it scored autonomous emergency braking, which is definitely a really good thing. It's mandated by 2025 that all new cars sold in Australia have to have that. And so Toyota have beat, well, ANCAP to the punch, I suppose. Up top, you also get cameras because this thing also adds lane departure warning, which is not an intrusive system. It will just warn you when you're veering out of the lane. It's a good thing to have. More importantly, it's tuned well. It's not annoying. But I will say that I think Toyota have been very sneaky in that they have upgraded this thing to have a GVM now of 3.51 tons. So that's gross vehicle mass, essentially how heavy this car can be. Huge upgrade from before, which was just over 3 tons. So for most people, that's a good thing. It means that you can carry more in here at the expense of having, well, harder suspension. The reason I think it's a bit sneaky is because they only did it so that they could class this thing a class above, and that way you could sidestep new regulations for side impact crash safety. Now I'm going to speculate here because this thing has not been tested by ANCAP in many years, but this would definitely not score a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. In fact, it's only got 2 airbags. So using this as your family car, I would honestly advise against it because you're not going to have any airbags in the second row. And I know a lot of you aren't going to care about that, but I also know that a lot of you will care about that. And if you want to learn more about that, check out our website, CarSauce.com. We have a full safety section on this. It goes in detail into how safe or unsafe this is. Because really, only the single cab 79 series has an updated crash safety structure, for example. All right, enough rambling. Let's check out the side. Okay, so coming to the side, you're going to see these pretty cool 16-inch wheels here. They're also wrapped in Grand Trek all-terrain tires, which are pretty decent tires, actually. You've got black scratchy plastic. You've also got a snorkel here, although it's not waterproof. You can see that there's like a little gap there. So I'd probably pull that off and put something a bit better on. This was a really funny change as part of the GVM upgrades and to make this thing, well, a class above, essentially make it a truck, is that by regulations, they've actually had to double the size of the indicator. So now it's just huge. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You have mirrors here, which are electronically adjusted, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure if that's just GXL spec or not, but still cool. You've got metal side steps, that's always nice. Of course, no keyless entry and go, but you should be grateful that you even get central locking, at least if you go for the top spec GXL. Massive glass here, and that's one of the things I love about the 76 series, apart from looking really cool. In fact, it's my favorite of all the 70 series, or maybe the Troopy is, I don't know. You let me know in the comment section, what's cooler, this or the Troopy, the 78? But it's really a glass house. You can see everywhere when you're driving. It's very good for visibility, and in that sense, it's safe-ish, I guess. You'll notice at the back that this thing actually has leaf spring suspension, something you don't really ever see in an SUV because it is very commercial. And they've actually made it so that these leaves can hold more weight, 3.51 tons, which is really substantial and actually a very good thing if you are planning on touring with this car. It means you can put more stuff in it, and that was really a big reason before that you would go for the Troopy, which had about 200 kilos more payload, but now they're all the same. So makes it easier decision, doesn't it? And I love this, the rear glass, which wrap around, they actually open up so you can vent air out of the car. It's a really cool, like 80s, 90s feature, but I love it. I wish more cars had it, frankly. Okay, let's check out the bum. Now, before we continue, I just want to give a very quick shout out to today's video sponsor, WIPERTECH. As you guys know, they are our channel sponsor and they will get you the absolute best wiper blades for your car. I use them on my car, I use them on my dad's car. They promise streak-free wiping, and honestly, I've had it on my car for a year now. It has not failed me. They're really easy to install. It literally takes under 2 minutes, and even I can do it, and I'm an idiot. They have Australian-based support, so no faffing around. And best of all, if you use my code linked in the comment section below and the description, of course, that'll get you 15% off your next order and free express delivery. So help the channel out, click the link below and help yourself out, get some new wipers. All right, let's talk about the backside of this thing because, look, nothing's really changed, but I love it. I really love it. And who doesn't? I mean, these are so in vogue. These were fashionable before SUVs were fashionable. There were no SUVs in the 80s, hardly any. This was one of the very few, and now every car is trying to copy this style. I love the tail lights here just because they're so simple, basic. You've got a Phillips head screwdriver there. If something goes on, you rip it out, you put it back in. It's the name of the game with this thing. You can really fix it anywhere in the world. You have more chrome down here, including a step over there. This thing does have a 3.5 ton braked towing capacity, which is quite decent, especially when you consider that this thing has so much torque to it. You've got a big full-size spare on the back, absolutely iconic. You've also got your Toyota badge, GXL, Toyota 4-wheel drive, and new for the facelift is under here, a little camera. Finally, you have a reverse camera. I don't know why it took them so long, but it's so necessary in one of these things to have it, and you've got it now. So fantastic. It's a lot easier to drive, honestly. The other thing I absolutely love is these barn doors. Check this out. I'm in love with them. I'm in love with them. Now Toyota, don't quote how much space you get in here, but it's so much. Unfortunately, that does mean that interior space is quite heavily compromised, but you get a lot of cargo space, I suppose. So great for touring, camping, whatever. You can also drop the rear seats relatively easily, and then you get quite a lot more space as well, like a stupid amount. You get your dual cone speakers here, which are terrible, so bad. Like, it's almost like they engineered these speakers to be so terrible. Otherwise, it's really just no nonsense, gets the job done, which is, of course, the name of the game with the 70 series. Let's check out the interior. Alrighty. Let's talk about the interior now of the LandCruiser 76, specifically the V8, because it actually is a little different. So in the 4-cylinder, you get this new center console. Here, you don't. So obviously, you get your 5-speed manual with some of the longest throws ever, but it is very easy to use. You also get a single cup holder, which is kind of interesting, but also a completely flat area in the center, which I really like. It's good for storage. What's new for the facelift? Well, the gauges up in front of you are new. It's supposed to look like the 40 series LandCruiser, and you get a little screen now, which is phenomenal. You can actually see what your fuel economy is and a few other bits of information. So I'm really happy to have it. I think they look great. It's awesome. This steering wheel, it's way better than it was before, that's for sure. It's a Hilux steering wheel, a plastic Hilux steering wheel. You do get buttons here to control the screen in front of you though, and some multimedia stuff there too, which wasn't there before. So big ups. Before, it literally looked like it was straight out of a coaster bus from the early 2000s. Also, you now have tilt and reach adjustment, whereas before I'm pretty sure you only had tilt. They've also increased the display size by literally points of an inch, so it looks pretty much the same as before, but at least you now get wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that's honestly really good to see. Thankfully, you retain your very strong air conditioning controls. Seriously, one of the best air conditioning systems ever. You've got such fine tune over your AC compressor, where the air is vented from, it's all mechanical, and also of course your temperature. So it's just a really, really good system. Love the grandfather clock up there with a little LandCruiser badge next to it. Also new for the facelift are 2 USB-C ports, which is really good to see, no pun intended. 12-volt socket here as well, and of course you have your controls here for locking the rear and front and rear diffs. As I said, this thing is really off-road capable straight from the factory, but you can do some insane mods to this thing, which in conjunction with its live front and rear axles and pretty great approach and departure angles straight from the factory, this thing is a monster off-roader, especially if you start to modify it. Storage is terrible. You get a single cup holder here, nothing in the doors. You do get a bottle holder on the passenger side, which I guess is a good thing. You also get upgraded seats when you go for the GXL, which is top of the range. They're commonly referred to as mouse fur because they have this really interesting texture to them. Some people, including myself, when you touch them, it makes you go, ugh, makes your skin crawl. So yeah, not everyone's gonna love that, but thankfully you can just rip them out because, you know, there's no airbag in them anyway. So you can put something a bit more comfortable, in fact, a lot more comfortable, because these seats kind of suck. Also, the headrest is literally different material to the seat. It looks entirely different. It's almost as if they have taken the headrest from another seat, which they have, and they've just plopped it on there. Like, it honestly looks ridiculous. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You've got the same mouse fur on the door panels as well. Makes the car premium when you go for the GXL. Can't forget this, a glove box here. Also interesting is this center console, which you can't use as an armrest. It's too low. But inside, there's a little bit of storage, but you can lift that up in a very hidden manner, and then you get heaps of storage in there. So I don't know why that's so discreetly covered.
Guess you can store your little goodies in there, if you know what I mean.
Don't do that. Four-wheel drive controller here as well. Of course, this thing has a low-range transfer case too. Otherwise, it's scratchy materials everywhere. That is by design. It's supposed to be hard wearing, and it's all pretty loose as well. Again, by design. So when you are out in the middle of Australia, where you don't have your local Toyota dealership, which by the way, they are plentiful in Australia, of course, but not so much in the middle of the desert or an off-road track, you can literally use a very basic toolkit to be able to get at everything in here. It's actually really impressive, and definitely one of the biggest draws of this thing and why you would buy one in the first place. No one buys this thinking they're going to get the epitome of luxury, and if you do, I genuinely think you should seek help. Seek help. It's so basic in here, but that's exactly what the owners of these cars want, and you can let me know in the comment section, is that what you want? Also, while you're down there, why don't you hit the like button? It really supports the channel. Let's check out the back seats. As I said, this generation of LandCruiser came out in the 80s, the early 80s, when, let's be honest, comfort, that was for So it's not great back here. I'm 5'11". This is my normal driving position, and it's not great. upgrade. This is my normal driving position, and look, I've got no leg room. In fact, digging into me up there, and I don't have much room up front anyway. You do get this netting here, and also stadium style seating, so you can see I'm actually sitting above the driver, and I can see ahead of me, which is good. Toe room is really good, except the rails for the seats, they're kind of sharp, and headroom as well is pretty damn decent. But I wouldn't be sticking 3 people in the back, because this is actually quite a narrow car, believe it or not. And so if you sit someone in the middle, or at least an adult, good luck fitting 3 across. I love this. Oh. The windows go most of the way down. It really is a glass house back here. I can see everything, and I love that. It means that longer journeys, people are gonna feel a lot more comfortable, that's for sure, except that there are no air vents back here, so it might get a bit hot. You could just ask them to turn it up in the front, I suppose. Of course, no center armrest, same mouse fur in the back, and the seats themselves are really stiff, not the nicest. Over longer journeys, it's gonna get uncomfortable. To be honest, your best bet is to rip out all of these seats and put in something better. And thankfully, the aftermarket exists to make these so much better. Okay, so it's not the most comfortable car. It's not the nicest car on the interior. Well, let's test the 0 to 100 of this monstrous V8. Alrighty, so now we're gonna launch the 76 series. Last time in the 79 series V8, we got 14.51 seconds. Let's see what we can get now. Here we go, we're gonna brake booster. Here we go. Come on. Come on, baby. Misshift there a little bit. Still got a slightly better time. 0 to 100 in 13.94 seconds. Okay, I'll take that. Alrighty, driving the Toyota LandCruiser 76 with the V8. Oh, it does sound really, really good. Let's talk about what's under the bonnet, because yeah, that hasn't changed. Since 2007, this thing has had a turbocharged V8. It's a single turbo, puts out 151 kilowatt of power, 430 newton meters of torque, which on paper really doesn't sound like very much at all. But as we all know, this thing has a huge torque band, 1200 to 3200 RPM. That means we downshift, this thing just keeps pulling. In fact, you could be at second, almost at 0 kilometers an hour, and this thing will still pull in second. It's pretty crazy. That makes it one of the easiest manuals to drive because it will never stall on you. If you stall this thing, you almost have to intentionally stall it. Let's be honest though, this 5-speed manual should have gone quite a long time ago, because when you sit at 100 kilometers an hour, this thing is revving away. We're only at 80 kilometers an hour at the moment. There's a lot of wind noise coming from that snorkel there, also from the wing mirrors, and the engine is really loud, and that makes this thing quite substantially less refined than the 4-cylinder, which you hear a lot less. I don't really care, but it's certainly something that I have noticed driving this thing around. It's more cumbersome to drive, there's no doubt about it. This thing might have a lot of torque, but it doesn't have much power. You know, my foot is flat on the floor right now in 5th going up this hill, and I almost need a downshift to keep going. It's something that I think a lot of 70 series owners can relate to. It's a lot more powerful than it was, you know, before 2007, but still could be better. Steering is, I mean, what do you expect? It's 4.4 turns to a lock, and so that means that, like, I didn't move at all just then. You know, you can whack the steering wheel around, it's not really gonna do anything, and really that's the biggest hindrance to this thing. It's not necessarily the suspension though, we'll come back to that in a second. It's more that, you know, this steering wheel is almost locked one way and it's hardly turning. Come on. Still, that V8 has a sweet sound. I love it. It sounds so good. Very raspy. It's, you know, it's not the coolest V8 in the world, but it sounds very good. One thing that a lot of people don't realize is that last year this thing got a pretty massive GVM upgrade. In fact, 3,510 kilograms, which is almost half a ton for this thing here. That's a huge upgrade, 500 kilos. But it does mean that this thing has even stiffer suspension than before, so that could be a bit of a negative. It's not too bad, but it's certainly noticeable over what was more of a lifestyle tune before. Wasn't great, but this is worse. In fact, that's really what the Wagon's about, because it's the lowest volume seller. It's about being the lifestyle car, or the SUV. Yeah, kind of loses that when you GVM upgrade it. All right, here we go. First gear is so short. You know, we just made it past 60 there. All right, hairpin number 1 on Saucy Corner. Suitcase is going around. Come on. We'll keep it in second. Sorry, suitcase. Oh. Yeah, look, it was never gonna handle amazingly, but it does handle better than the Troopy because the Troopy has a 250mm longer wheelbase versus this. Shorter wheelbase cars tend to just generally handle better. However, I will say that that is better for suspension though, because you know the front axle and the rear axle are further away, and therefore when you hit a bump at the front, it takes longer to hit the bump at the rear. So it's more comfortable. So all of that sounds pretty damn negative, doesn't it? And the reality is, it is. It's an absolute dog to drive this. However, that's not what this car is about, is it? In stock standard form, it's pretty bad. You know, the seats are really uncomfortable. The ride is really harsh. The engine does not put out much power. Sure, it's got good torque, but you know, you still have to drop gears all the time. The 5-speed manual yells at you. You're traveling along the highway at 100 kilometers an hour and it's like the engine is screaming at you in pain. The fuel economy, look, it's okay. Let's have a look. 12.6 liters per 100 kilometers. That is purely highway driven today. Around town, this thing's like up to 20 liters. It's really bad. So, what's good about it? Well, it's of course the modification of it. When you start to modify this thing, that's when it unlocks its true potential. It does start to really raise the price of this thing. You increase the rear track width, $7 grand. You tune up the engine, you lose your warranty. You change the seats, however much money. You upgrade the suspension if you want it softer or firmer for even more GVM. You go through the whole process and you're spending tens and tens of thousands of dollars. You know, even changing out this 5-speed manual for a 6-speed GM box, that's thousands and thousands of dollars, or converting it to the automatic, thousands and thousands of dollars. However, if you're willing to spend that money, then you can really make the 70 series work for you. And you'll take what is already a good off-roader with front and rear live axles, and you'll make it something just so phenomenal for a lot of money. Now, this thing is, I would really struggle to say it's safe, as you can see. It's got 2 airbags, it does have ABS, which it should have. Cruise control was added in 2016, but they have just added autonomous emergency braking, which is good to see, although mandated by 2025, and also lane departure warning, but it doesn't do much, it just beeps, which a lot of you are gonna like anyway, so not really a bad thing. I just went for 6th gear. Doesn't have it, Matt. Doesn't have it. Alrighty, let's get into our final thoughts. Okay, so final thoughts on the LandCruiser 76, the Wagon, and more specifically with the V8. Should you buy one before they go extinct pretty damn soon? Well, without spoiling the upcoming V8 versus 4-cylinder, which again, you should definitely be subscribed for, I will say that if you are a purist, which I know a lot of you LandCruiser owners are, and if you are someone that wants to get the most out of their LandCruiser, then unfortunately the V8 is the way to go. And I say unfortunately because the price is just so expensive, and even more so than before. You don't get a lot. It's a pretty bad experience straight out of the box, but that's not what this thing is about. It's about what you can get out of it, which we know is a lot. In fact, I know it. My uncle has one of these and he has tuned everything. He's changed the seats, new suspension, engine tune, new exhaust, and that's what a lot of these owners do. The list goes on, by the way. He spent tens of thousands of dollars on it and loves it. He loves it. But let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Would you go for the V8? And what do you think of the 76 series? Ciao for now.